The telegram arrived at the San Jose, California train depot on a scorching afternoon in July of 1882, and Olivia Norwood read it 3 times before the words finally made sense through her mounting horror. Miss Norwood stop arrangements unsuitable stop return to sender stop. She stood frozen on the wooden platform, her traveling trunk at her feet, while curious onlookers pretended not to stare at the mail-order bride, who had just been rejected like a faulty piece of merchandise. Olivia's hands trembled as she clutched the thin paper, her green eyes burning with unshed tears she refused to let fall in public. She had traveled over 2,000 miles from Boston, had left behind everything familiar, had spent 6 weeks corresponding with a man named Gerald Thompson, who claimed to need a sensible wife for his ranch outside San Jose. The letters had been practical rather than romantic, but Olivia had convinced herself that respect and partnership could grow into something more. Now she understood that Gerald Thompson had taken one look at her through the station window and found her wanting. She was 22 years old, plain-faced with brown hair that refused to hold a curl, and too tall for fashion at 5 feet 8 inches. Her figure was slender rather than curved, her hands already work-roughened from helping her widowed mother take in laundry for 10 years before consumption claimed her last winter. Olivia had no illusions about her appearance, but she had hoped her willingness to work hard and her decent education might compensate for her lack of beauty. Apparently, she had been wrong. "Miss," the station attendant approached nervously, a skinny man with tobacco-stained whiskers. "There's a return train heading east day after tomorrow. I can hold your trunk in the baggage room if you need lodging recommendations." "Thank you," Olivia managed, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning through her chest. She had exactly $14.30 to her name after purchasing her westward ticket. Not nearly enough to start over somewhere new, barely enough to survive until she could find work, and certainly not enough to return to Boston where she had no home waiting anyway. The platform was crowded with afternoon travelers, freight handlers, and locals conducting business. Olivia wanted nothing more than to disappear, but she forced herself to stand tall and gather her dignity around her like armor. She would not let these strangers see her break. "Excuse me, miss." The voice came from her left, low and rough like gravel wrapped in velvet. "Couldn't help but overhear your situation." Olivia turned to find a man watching her from beneath the brim of a dusty brown hat. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of aged whiskey. His face was strong-featured and handsome in a rugged way, with a few days' worth of stubble darkening his jaw. He wore a faded blue shirt, worn denim pants, and scuffed boots that had seen serious use. A working man, she judged, probably a ranch hand or cowboy based on his weathered appearance. "I have no wish to discuss it," Olivia said quietly, turning away. "Name is Daniel Brennan," the man continued as if she had not spoken. "I own a horse ranch about 12 miles north of here. Been looking for a wife myself, truth be told. If you are still in need of a situation, I would be honored if you would consider my offer." Olivia's head snapped around, her eyes narrowing with suspicion and wounded pride. "You think because one man has rejected me, I should be grateful for any proposal. I am not that desperate, sir." Daniel Brennan's expression remained calm, though something flickered in those amber eyes. "Did not mean offense, miss. Just seems like poor planning on Thompson's part, sending you back without even a conversation. Figured if you had made the journey this far, you deserved better treatment than that." He gestured toward the waiting room. "Station has a restaurant inside. Would you allow me to buy you a meal? No obligations, no expectations. Just thought you might like to sit down and catch your breath before making any decisions." The kindness in his voice nearly undid her composure completely. Olivia blinked hard against the threatening tears and nodded once, not trusting herself to speak. Daniel picked up her heavy trunk as though it weighed nothing and carried it inside, arranging for it to be stored safely before guiding her to a corner table in the small restaurant. The lunch crowd had mostly cleared out, leaving only a handful of patrons scattered throughout the room. Daniel ordered coffee and sandwiches without asking what she wanted, and Olivia was grateful not to have to make even that small decision. She felt hollowed out, exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. "How long did you correspond with Thompson?" Daniel asked once the waitress had delivered their coffee. 6 weeks, Olivia said, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. His letters were very proper. He said he needed a wife who could help run a household, someone practical and hardworking. I thought I met those requirements. "You probably exceeded them," Daniel said bluntly. "Thompson's a fool. He inherited that ranch from his father 2 years ago and has been running it into the ground ever since. Drinks too much, gambles more than he should, and changes his mind like other men change their shirts. Whatever he saw or did not see when you arrived had nothing to do with your worth." The matter-of-fact way he spoke eased something tight in Olivia's chest. "You know him. Know of him. San Jose is not such a big town that ranchers do not hear about each other." Daniel took a sip of his coffee, studying her over the rim of his cup. "What made you leave Boston?" "Nothing left for me there," Olivia said simply. "My mother died in February. We had been living in a rented room and I could not afford to keep it on my own. I could have found work as a domestic, but that felt like trading one form of poverty for another. When I saw Mr. Thompson's advertisement, it seemed like an opportunity for something more." "You have other family?" "No. My father died when I was 16. My mother had a sister in Philadelphia, but they had not spoken in years. I am alone." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with truth. Daniel's expression softened with something that looked like understanding. "I know what that feels like," he said quietly. "My parents died of cholera when I was 19. Had a younger sister, Sarah, but she got sick that same summer, lost all of them within 6 weeks. "I am sorry," Olivia whispered. "Was 12 years ago now, still miss them, but time helps." He paused as the waitress delivered thick sandwiches of beef and cheese on fresh bread. "Came west in 71, worked as a ranch hand for 8 years, saved everything I could. Bought my own spread 3 years ago. It is not much yet, just 160 acres and about 30 horses, but it is mine, building it slow and steady." "Why do you want a wife?" Olivia asked, surprising herself with her directness. Daniel did not seem offended by the question. "Gets lonely," he admitted. "I am 31 years old, miss. Lived alone for most of my adult life. I have built something I am proud of, but there is no one to share it with, no one to talk to at the end of the day, no one to build a future with." He met her eyes steadily. "I am not going to lie and say I am looking for a grand romance. I am practical enough to know that takes time. But I am looking for a partner, someone to work alongside, someone to trust. If affection grows from that, all the better." Olivia took a bite of her sandwich, using the time to organize her thoughts. Everything about this situation was irregular. She had known Gerald Thompson through letters for weeks before making the journey west. This man was a complete stranger offering her a life-changing proposition over lunch. It should have felt wrong, dangerous even. But there was something in Daniel Brennan's straightforward manner that inspired trust. He did not try to charm or flatter her. He simply stated facts and let her draw her own conclusions. After the humiliation of being rejected by a man who had never even spoken to her, Daniel's honest approach felt like cool water after a long drought. "What would you expect from a wife?" she asked carefully. Help running the household, Daniel said. Cooking, cleaning, the usual domestic work. I am out with the horses most days from dawn until dusk. Would need someone to handle the house, maybe the vegetable garden if you are inclined. Eventually, children if we are blessed with them. Beyond that, I expect honesty, respect, and loyalty. I would offer the same in return. And if we find we do not suit each other? Daniel considered the question seriously. That is a risk, he acknowledged. But I figure if we are both committed to treating each other decently and working together, we can make it work even if we are not madly in love. My parents started out in an arranged marriage. My mother used to say they had to learn to love each other, but once they did, it was stronger for having been chosen rather than just felt. He pushed his empty plate aside. I will not lie to you or make promises I cannot keep, Miss Norwood. This would be a gamble for both of us. But I can promise you a home, security, and respectful treatment. That is more than what you were offered today. It was more than she had been offered in months, truthfully. Olivia looked down at her half-eaten sandwich, her mind racing through her limited options. She could try to find work in San Jose, but with only $14, she would be destitute within days if she did not find employment immediately. She could attempt to return to Boston, but she would arrive with nothing and no one. Or she could take a chance on this straightforward cowboy who looked at her with kind eyes and spoke to her like an equal. I need to know something first, Olivia said, raising her gaze to meet his. Why did you not advertise for a mail-order bride yourself? Why make an offer to someone else's rejected bride? A faint smile tugged at Daniel's mouth, the first she had seen from him. It transformed his face, softening the harsh lines and making him look younger. Been meaning to place an advertisement for months, he admitted. Kept putting it off because I am better with horses than words. Could never figure out how to write what I was looking for without sounding like I was ordering from a catalog. His smile faded into something more serious. When I saw you standing on that platform, holding that telegram, trying so hard not to cry, I thought you looked like someone who deserved better than what life had handed you. Figured maybe I could offer that. The sincerity in his voice made Olivia's throat tight. She had spent so much of her life being overlooked or dismissed. Her father had loved her but died too soon. Her mother had needed her but been too worn down by poverty to offer much affection. The few young men who had shown interest in Boston had drifted away once they realized she had no dowry and no prospects. Gerald Thompson had rejected her based on nothing more than appearance, but Daniel Brennan saw her as someone who deserved better. That simple statement meant more than any flowery declaration could have. I would need a few conditions, Olivia said slowly, her heart pounding as she realized she was actually considering this insane proposition. Name them. I would want my own spending money. Not much, but some amount that is mine to use as I see fit, and I would want to continue my education. I brought books with me. I would like time to read and study. Agreed. Would $20 a month be sufficient for personal spending? And you can have every evening after supper for reading. I usually work on ranch accounts then anyway. $20 a month was more than generous for personal spending. Olivia felt some of the tightness in her chest ease. I would also want to wait before, she hesitated, feeling her face heat, before we consummate the marriage. I would need time to adjust. Daniel's expression remained respectful. That is reasonable. We can wait until you are ready. I will not force myself on you, Olivia. May I call you Olivia? Yes, and I will call you Daniel. So you are considering it. Olivia drew a deep breath and made her decision. She had come west looking for a new beginning. Perhaps this was not the beginning she had expected, but life rarely went according to plan. Daniel Brennan seemed like a good man, and good men were rare enough to be worth taking a chance on. "Yes," she said firmly, "I will marry you, Daniel Brennan." The smile that spread across Daniel's face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "Then let us go find a preacher," he said. "Assuming you do not want to wait." "I see no point in waiting," Olivia said. "If we are going to do this, we might as well start now." They finished their meal in a strange state of companionable excitement. Daniel paid the bill and collected Olivia's trunk, then led her through the dusty streets of San Jose to a small white church on the edge of town. The Reverend, a portly man named Patterson, looked startled when Daniel explained their situation but agreed to perform the ceremony. "You are certain about this, miss?" Reverend Patterson asked quietly while Daniel stepped outside to speak with the church secretary about serving as a witness. "You have only just met this man." "I am certain," Olivia said, and was surprised to realize she meant it. There was something solid and trustworthy about Daniel Brennan. She might not know him well, but her instincts said he was exactly what he appeared to be, an honest man making an honest offer. The ceremony was brief and simple. The church secretary, a woman named Mrs. Dawson, served as witness along with the Reverend's wife. Olivia stood in her travel-stained dress next to Daniel in his work clothes, and they spoke vows that would bind them together for life. When Daniel slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, Olivia felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time they were not entirely from sadness. "You may kiss your bride," Reverend Patterson said with a warm smile. Daniel looked at Olivia, a question in his eyes. She nodded slightly, and he leaned down to press a chaste kiss to her lips. It was brief and gentle, more promise than passion, but it sent a strange flutter through Olivia's stomach nonetheless. They signed the marriage certificate, paid the Reverend $5 for his services, and emerged into the late afternoon sunshine as husband and wife. The whole thing had taken less than an hour. Olivia felt dazed, as though she was watching events unfold from outside her own body. "You all right?" Daniel asked, his hand gentle on her elbow as he guided her toward a wagon hitched outside the church. "I think so," Olivia said. "This has been quite a day." "That is putting it mildly." Daniel loaded her trunk into the wagon bed, then helped her onto the bench seat with old-fashioned courtesy. "It is about an hour's drive to the ranch. We can stop at the general store first if you need supplies." "I have everything I need in my trunk," Olivia said. "I am eager to see my new home." They left San Jose behind, the wagon rolling north along a dusty road that cut through golden hills dotted with oak trees. The landscape was nothing like Boston. Everything here felt open and wild, the sky impossibly blue and vast above them. Olivia breathed in air scented with sun-warmed grass and dust, so different from the coal smoke and sea salt smell of the city she had left behind. Daniel drove with easy competence, his large hands steady on the reins. He pointed out landmarks as they traveled, a neighboring ranch here, a creek bed there, a stand of trees that marked the boundary of his property. He talked about the horses he raised, mostly working stock for ranches and farms with a few finer animals for breeding. His voice held genuine passion when he spoke about his work, and Olivia found herself listening with interest. "You ride?" Daniel asked. "I never had the opportunity to learn," Olivia admitted. "Will that be a problem?" "Not a problem, just means I will have to teach you." "Useful skill to have out here. The ranch is not so remote that you need to ride everywhere, but it opens up your range." He glanced at her. "You are not afraid of horses?" "I do not think so. I have never been around them much. They are good creatures once you understand them. Honest in a way people often are not. A horse will not lie to you about what it is feeling." Olivia found herself smiling. "You sound like you prefer horses to people." "Most people," Daniel agreed. Present company accepted. They lapsed into comfortable silence as the wagon continued north. Olivia studied her new husband from the corner of her eye, trying to reconcile the reality of her situation. This morning, she had expected to meet Gerald Thompson and begin a carefully planned new life. Instead, she was married to a man she had known for less than 4 hours, traveling to a home she had never seen. It should have been terrifying. Instead, she felt a strange sense of calm, as though some part of her recognized that she had made the right choice. The sun was lowering toward the western hills when Daniel turned the wagon onto a narrow track that wound between two gently rolling slopes. "Almost there," he said. "It is not fancy, but it is solid." They crested a small rise, and Olivia got her first view of the Brennan ranch. The house was a simple single-story structure built of wood and stone, with a wide front porch and a roof that looked recently repaired. It was small but well-maintained, with glass windows and a sturdy door. Behind it stood a large barn, several corrals, and a handful of smaller outbuildings. The setting was beautiful, nestled in a shallow valley with oak-studded hills rising on 3 sides and a clear view south toward San Jose in the distance. "It is lovely," Olivia said, meaning it. Daniel's expression brightened. "Been working on it for 3 years. House only has 4 rooms right now, but I have plans to add on. Barn is the newest building. Finished it last year." He drew the wagon up in front of the house and hopped down, then came around to help Olivia descend. His hands were firm on her waist as he lifted her down, and Olivia was acutely aware of his strength and proximity. She stepped back quickly, suddenly shy. Daniel carried her trunk up onto the porch and opened the front door. "Welcome home, Olivia Brennan." The name sent a little shock through her. She was Olivia Brennan now, no longer a Norwood. She had a new name, a new home, a new life. She stepped across the threshold and looked around with curious eyes. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace at one end and a simple but solid table with 4 chairs in the center. The kitchen area held a cast iron stove, a dry sink with a pump handle, and open shelves stocked with dishes and provisions. Everything was clean but sparse, the home of a man who lived alone and focused on function over comfort. "Bedroom is through there," Daniel said, pointing to a door on the left. "There is a smaller room I use for storage and a washroom with a tub. Outhouse is behind the barn, but I have been working on installing an indoor privy in the washroom. Should be finished in a few weeks." Olivia followed him into the bedroom and found a large bed covered with a simple quilt, a dresser, and a wardrobe. A window looked out toward the eastern hills. The room was neat and impersonal, with none of the small touches that made a space feel lived in. "I will sleep in the storage room," Daniel said quickly, seeing her expression. "Like we agreed, you take the bedroom. I will move some of my things out tonight." "Thank you," Olivia said quietly. She was grateful for his consideration, for keeping his promise even though they were now legally married, and he had every right to expect her to share his bed. Daniel carried her trunk into the bedroom and set it by the wardrobe. "You must be exhausted," he said. "Why do not you rest while I see to the horses and animals? I will make supper when I come back in." "I can make supper," Olivia protested. "That is part of our arrangement, is it not? It can start tomorrow. Today you have been rejected, married a stranger, and traveled to a new home. That is enough for one day." His smile was gentle. "Rest, Olivia. I will wake you when food is ready." He left before she could argue further, closing the door quietly behind him. Olivia stood alone in her new bedroom in her new house, married to her new husband, and felt the events of the day finally crash over her like a wave. She sank onto the edge of the bed, buried her face in her hands, and let herself cry for the first time since reading that terrible telegram. She cried for the humiliation of being rejected, for the fear and uncertainty of her situation, for her mother who would never know she had married, for the life in Boston that had not been happy but had at least been familiar. She cried until she had no tears left, then wiped her face and looked around the plain bedroom with tired eyes. This was her life now. She had made her choice and she would live with it. Olivia Brennan, wife of Daniel Brennan, mistress of a horse ranch in California. It was so far from anything she had imagined for herself that it felt almost dreamlike. She stood and unpacked her few belongings, hanging her 2 spare dresses in the wardrobe and arranging her small collection of books on top of the dresser. She had her mother's Bible, a volume of Wordsworth's poetry, a copy of Jane Eyre that had been her prized possession since she was 16, and a basic guide to household management. Not much to show for 22 years of life, but it was hers. By the time Daniel knocked on the door to announce supper, Olivia had washed her face in the basin on the dresser and pinned her hair into a neater arrangement. She emerged to find the table set with plates of fried ham, eggs, and thick slices of bread with butter. Coffee steamed in 2 mugs. "I am not much of a cook," Daniel admitted as they sat down. "Mostly, I just make simple things. You will probably want to take over the kitchen quickly before you get too accustomed to my terrible food." Olivia took a bite of ham and found it crispy and well seasoned. "This is not terrible at all. Wait until you try my attempts at biscuits. They could be used as building materials." She laughed, surprising herself. It felt good to laugh after such a difficult day. They ate in companionable silence, both too tired for much conversation. When the meal was finished, Olivia insisted on washing the dishes while Daniel brought in more firewood and checked the doors. "I usually wake around 5 to start the day's work," Daniel said as they finished their evening tasks. "But you sleep as long as you need tomorrow. No rush to settle into a routine right away." "I am an early riser," Olivia said. "I will make breakfast. Then I will look forward to it." Daniel hesitated, then added awkwardly, "If you need anything during the night, just call out. I am a light sleeper." "Thank you, Daniel, for everything today. I know this is strange for both of us, but I appreciate your kindness." "We will figure it out," Daniel said simply. "Good night, Olivia." "Good night." Olivia retreated to the bedroom and changed into her nightgown, then crawled beneath the quilt. The bed was comfortable, the room quiet except for the gentle sounds of crickets and distant horses. She lay in the darkness and thought about everything that had changed in the span of a single day. This morning she had been alone in the world, her future uncertain and frightening. Tonight she was a married woman with a home and a husband who seemed genuinely decent. It was not the romantic love story she had dreamed of as a girl, but perhaps it was something better, a partnership built on honesty and mutual respect. Perhaps that was enough to build a life on. In the next room, she could hear Daniel moving around, settling in for the night. Olivia closed her eyes and let exhaustion pull her down into sleep, her last thought that tomorrow she would begin her new life in earnest. The next morning, Olivia woke to the sound of a rooster crowing and pale dawn light filtering through the bedroom window. For a moment she was disoriented, unsure where she was, and then memory returned in a rush. California. The ranch. Daniel. She was married. She dressed quickly in one of her simple work dresses and braided her hair, then emerged to find the main room empty. Through the window she could see Daniel already out in the corrals, working with a large bay horse. She watched for a moment, fascinated by the easy way he moved, the obvious rapport between man and animal. The kitchen was hers to explore now. Olivia found flour, lard, baking powder, and salt, along with eggs from the henhouse and milk in the cold box Daniel had mentioned was fed by the nearby creek. She set to work making biscuits, frying bacon, and preparing coffee, falling easily into the familiar rhythms of kitchen work. By the time Daniel came in, drawn by the smells of cooking, Olivia had breakfast laid out on the table. His eyes widened when he saw the spread. "This looks incredible," he said, washing his hands at the sink before sitting down. "How did you manage all this?" "Years of practice," Olivia said. "My mother and I may have been poor, but we knew how to cook." The biscuits were fluffy and golden, the bacon perfectly crispy. Daniel ate with obvious appreciation, and Olivia felt a little glow of pride at having pleased him. It was such a small thing, but it felt like a good start. "I was thinking," Daniel said as they finished eating. "Would you like to see the ranch today? I can show you around, introduce you to the horses, explain how everything works." "I would like that very much," Olivia said. They spent the morning exploring the property. Daniel showed her the barn, where a dozen horses were stabled, and explained his breeding program. He introduced her to the chickens, the 2 milk cows, and the barn cat who kept the mice population under control. He walked her through the vegetable garden, which was struggling from lack of attention, and showed her the creek that provided water for the ranch. Olivia found herself charmed by Daniel's enthusiasm for his work. He clearly loved the ranch and took pride in what he had built. When he talked about his plans for the future, expanding the herd, improving the bloodlines, building a reputation for quality horses, his whole face lit up with passion. "You really love this life," Olivia observed as they stood by the creek, watching water ripple over smooth stones. "I do," Daniel admitted. "It is hard work, but it is mine. Every fence post I set, every foal I help birth, every building I repair, it is all building toward something permanent, something that will last." He glanced at her. "I hope you will come to love it too." "I think I could," Olivia said honestly. The ranch was beautiful in its simplicity, and there was something appealing about the idea of building something lasting. She had spent so much of her life just surviving, moving from one day to the next without any sense of permanence. The idea of putting down roots, of having a real home, was more attractive than she had realized. Over the following weeks, Olivia settled into her new life with surprising ease. She took over all the household tasks, discovering that running a ranch house was both similar to and different from her previous domestic experience. There was more space, more work, but also more resources to work with. Daniel kept her well supplied with provisions, and never complained about the cost when she requested items from town. She established a routine of waking early, making breakfast, tending the vegetable garden, preparing meals, cleaning the house, and spending her evenings reading by lamplight while Daniel worked on his accounts at the other end of the table. They fell into an easy companionship, sharing meals and conversation, learning each other's habits and preferences. Daniel proved to be a man of his word in every respect. He treated Olivia with unfailing respect, never pushing her for more than she was ready to give. He kept to the small storage room at night, though Olivia had noticed he was not sleeping well on the narrow cot he had set up. He gave her the promised $20 each month and never questioned how she spent it. He encouraged her reading and often asked what she was studying, listening with genuine interest when she explained some passage from Wordsworth, or discussed the philosophical questions raised in her books. For her part, Olivia found herself growing increasingly fond of her unexpected husband. Daniel was good-natured and patient, with a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh. He was unfailingly kind, not just to her but to the animals in his care, and the occasional ranch hands he hired for specific tasks. He worked from dawn until dusk without complaint, taking pride in even the smallest improvements to the ranch. She noticed other things too. The way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. The surprising gentleness in his large, work-roughened hands when he handled a newborn foal. The rare moments when he sang to himself while working, his voice a pleasant baritone. The consideration he showed in small ways, like bringing her wildflowers he found on the range or saving the newspaper from town so she could read the news. One evening in late August, about 6 weeks after their marriage, Olivia was preparing supper when Daniel came in from the barn looking troubled. "Everything all right?" she asked, glancing up from the potatoes she was peeling. "One of the mares is having trouble with her foaling," Daniel said. "I might need to stay in the barn tonight to monitor her. I am sorry. I know I promised to help you move that old dresser from the storage room." "The dresser can wait," Olivia said immediately. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Daniel looked surprised. "You do not have to. Foaling can be messy and it might take hours." "I want to help," Olivia said firmly. "Let me finish getting supper on and then I will come out." She prepared a simple meal of sandwiches and coffee that could be eaten quickly, then followed Daniel to the barn. The mare, a pretty chestnut named Rosie, was clearly in distress, pacing her stall and showing signs of labor that was not progressing properly. "She is a first-time mother," Daniel explained quietly. "Sometimes they have trouble. I am hoping she will settle and the foal will come naturally, but I might need to assist." Olivia stayed with him through the long evening and into the night, bringing him coffee and food, holding the lantern when he needed extra light, and offering quiet companionship during the tense waiting. Around midnight, it became clear that Rosie needed help. Daniel rolled up his sleeves and carefully intervened, his movements sure and practiced, despite the delicate nature of the work. Olivia watched in fascination as he helped guide the foal into the world, his strength and gentleness perfectly balanced. When the little colt finally slid free and took its first shaky breath, she felt tears of relief and joy prick her eyes. "You did wonderfully," she told Daniel as they watched Rosie begin cleaning her new baby. Daniel wiped his sweaty face with his sleeve, leaving a streak of dirt across his cheek. "Could not have done it without you," he said. "Thank you for staying." "Of course I stayed." "We are partners, are we not?" Something shifted in Daniel's expression, his amber eyes warm in the lantern light. "Yes," he said softly, "we are partners." They walked back to the house together under a sky brilliant with stars. At the door, Daniel paused and looked down at Olivia with an expression she could not quite read. "I know this is not what you planned when you came west," he said quietly, "but I am grateful every day that you took a chance on me. You have made this house into a home, Olivia. I want you to know that." Olivia's heart squeezed in her chest. "I am grateful too," she admitted. "You saved me that day at the train station. You gave me a home and a future when I had nothing. I will not forget that." "I did not do it for gratitude," Daniel said. "I did it because—" He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. "Because when I saw you standing there, so brave and proud despite being hurt, something in me recognized something in you. I cannot explain it better than that." Olivia understood exactly what he meant. She had felt it too, that sense of recognition, of finding something she had not known she was looking for. She reached out and touched his arm gently. "I know," she said. "I felt it too." Daniel covered her hand with his, and they stood that way for a long moment, connected by more than just their legal marriage. When they finally went inside and retired to their separate rooms, Olivia lay awake for a long time, thinking about the unexpected turn her life had taken and the feelings that were growing in her heart. She was falling in love with her husband. Somewhere between the daily routines and quiet conversations, between shared meals and shared silences, Affection had grown into something deeper. She loved the man Daniel was, his integrity and kindness, his passion for his work and his gentle treatment of her. She loved the life they were building together, the partnership they had forged. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. She did not know if Daniel felt the same way, or if he still saw their marriage as primarily practical. But Olivia knew with sudden clarity that she was ready for their relationship to become a true marriage in every sense of the word. The question was how to tell him. As summer faded into autumn, the ranch settled into new rhythms. The foals born in spring were now sturdy youngsters being trained to lead and accept handling. Daniel prepared for the breeding season, selecting which mares would be bred to which stallions. The vegetable garden produced a bounty of squash, tomatoes, and beans that Olivia spent long days preserving for winter. The physical work kept them both busy, but Olivia was acutely aware of the growing tension between them. She noticed the way Daniel's eyes followed her movements, the way he found excuses to be near her, the careful way he avoided any accidental touch as though he did not trust himself. She knew he was still keeping his promise, waiting for her to indicate she was ready for more. In mid-September, Daniel announced that he needed to make a trip to Sacramento to meet with a potential horse buyer. "I will be gone 3 days," he said. "Will you be all right here alone? I can see if Mrs. Miller from the neighboring ranch could stay with you." "I will be fine," Olivia assured him. "I have managed a household before, and I have the shotgun you taught me to use. I am not afraid of being alone." Daniel looked uncertain but finally nodded. "If you are sure, I will leave early tomorrow morning." That evening, Olivia made Daniel's favorite meal of roasted chicken and apple pie. After supper, as they sat at the table with their customary coffee, she gathered her courage. "Daniel, I have been thinking," she began, then stopped, unsure how to continue. "About what?" Daniel asked, his expression attentive. "About our marriage, about the arrangement we made." Olivia felt her face heat but forced herself to continue. "You have been very patient with me, very respectful of the boundaries I asked for. I appreciate that more than I can say." "Of course," Daniel said quietly. "I meant what I promised you, Olivia. I know. But I think that is I would like." She took a deep breath and met his eyes directly. "I am ready for our marriage to be a real marriage, Daniel, in every way if you still want that." Daniel went very still, his eyes searching her face. "You are certain? I do not want you to feel pressured." "I am certain," Olivia said firmly. "I am not agreeing out of obligation. I am agreeing because I want to, because you have become more to me than just a husband in name. I care for you, Daniel, very much." The smile that broke across Daniel's face was radiant. He reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb stroking gently over her knuckles. "I care for you too, Olivia, more than I knew how to say. These past months, getting to know you, watching you make this place into a home, it has been," he shook his head, struggling with emotion. "You are everything I could have hoped for and more. I think I started falling in love with you that first day when you stood on that platform refusing to cry." "You love me," Olivia whispered, her heart soaring. "I love you," Daniel confirmed, his voice rough with feeling. "I have been trying not to say it because I did not want to pressure you, but yes, I love you, Olivia Brennan." Olivia felt tears spill down her cheeks, but this time they were tears of joy. "I love you too," she said. "I think I have for weeks, but I was afraid you only saw me as a practical arrangement." Daniel stood and came around the table, drawing Olivia to her feet. He cupped her face gently in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "You are not a practical arrangement," he said fiercely. "You are my wife, my partner, and the woman I love. If I could go back to that train station knowing everything I know now, I would still make you the same offer, because finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me." Then he kissed her, and this time there was nothing chaste about it. His lips were warm and firm, moving against hers with a passion that had been carefully leashed for months. Olivia responded instinctively, her arms coming up to wrap around his neck, her body pressing close to his. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. "Are you certain about this?" he asked one more time. "We can wait until I return from Sacramento." "I do not want to wait," Olivia said. "I want my husband tonight." The look Daniel gave her made her knees weak. He swept her into his arms, making her gasp with surprise, and carried her to the bedroom they would finally share. He set her down gently beside the bed, then lit the lamp on the bedside table with hands that were not entirely steady. "I have dreamed about this," Daniel admitted, turning back to her. "About having you here, knowing you wanted me as much as I want you." "Show me," Olivia said, emboldened by love and desire. "Show me how much you want me." Daniel needed no further invitation. He kissed her again, his hands beginning a careful exploration of her body through the fabric of her dress. Olivia responded with growing passion, discovering that the chemistry between them was every bit as strong as their emotional connection. When they finally came together, it was with tenderness and passion in equal measure, a physical expression of the love they had declared with words. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the bed, Olivia's head resting on Daniel's chest while his hand stroked slowly through her unbound hair. "I love you," Daniel murmured. "My brave, beautiful wife." "I love you too," Olivia replied, pressing a kiss to his chest. "My kind, wonderful husband." They fell asleep that way, finally and completely united, and Olivia thought that no wedding night could have been more perfect, even if theirs had come 3 months late. Daniel's trip to Sacramento was successful. He returned with a contract to supply working horses to a freight company, which represented significant new income for the ranch. But more importantly, he returned to a home that felt completely different from the one he had left. Olivia welcomed him with an enthusiasm that made him laugh and swing her around in a circle before kissing her thoroughly. Their relationship deepened throughout that autumn. The physical intimacy opened up new dimensions of emotional closeness. They talked for hours about their hopes and dreams, their fears and sorrows, their plans for the future. Daniel shared stories about his parents and sister, keeping their memories alive. Olivia talked about her childhood, about the books she loved, about the education she had always wished she could have. "You are smarter than most people with fancy degrees," Daniel told her one evening as she tried to explain a philosophical concept she had been reading about. "I never had much schooling myself, but I love listening to you talk about what you are learning." "You are brilliant with the horses," Olivia countered. "Intelligence takes many forms." As winter approached, they worked together to prepare the ranch for the cold months ahead. They insulated the barn, stocked the root cellar, and laid in supplies of hay and grain. Daniel taught Olivia to ride, first on a gentle mare named Daisy, and then on increasingly spirited horses. She discovered she loved riding, loved the sense of freedom it gave her to move across the land. Christmas came, and they celebrated quietly together, exchanging modest gifts. Daniel gave Olivia a beautiful leather-bound journal and a set of pencils. "For writing down your thoughts," he said. "You are always reading, but I thought maybe you would enjoy writing too." Olivia gave Daniel a new hat to replace his battered old one, along with leather work gloves she had saved for weeks to afford. "To keep you warm and protected," she said. But the best gift either of them received came in January, when Olivia realized with a mixture of joy and nerves that she was almost certainly pregnant. She waited until she was sure before telling Daniel, wanting to be certain before raising his hopes. On a cold January evening, with snow dusting the hills outside and a warm fire crackling in the hearth, Olivia took Daniel's hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "I have something to tell you," she said, watching his face. "We are going to have a baby. In August, I think." The expression that crossed Daniel's face was one of pure wonder. "Truly," he whispered, "truly. You are going to be a father." Daniel let out a whoop of joy and pulled Olivia into his arms, spinning her around before remembering her condition and setting her down carefully. "A baby," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Our baby. Olivia, this is I know," Olivia said, laughing and crying at the same time. "I feel the same way." They spent the rest of the evening making plans, talking about names and what changes they would need to make to the house. Daniel insisted that Olivia must do less heavy work, that he would hire help for the ranch so she could rest more. Olivia argued that she was pregnant, not ill, but she was touched by his concern. "I want you and the baby to be safe," Daniel said seriously. "You are the most precious things in my world, Olivia. I will do whatever it takes to protect you both." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. As Olivia's belly began to swell with new life, Daniel became even more devoted and protective. He built a cradle from oak wood, sanding it smooth and carving delicate patterns into the headboard. He painted the storage room that had briefly served as his bedroom, transforming it into a nursery with whitewashed walls and a cheerful yellow curtain at the window. Neighbors they had not met before began appearing at the ranch, once word spread of Olivia's condition. The ranching community, it turned out, was tight-knit despite the distances between properties. Women arrived with advice, baby clothes, and offers of help. Men came to congratulate Daniel and share stories of their own children. Olivia, who had felt isolated during the first months at the ranch, discovered a sense of community she had not experienced since childhood. Mrs. Miller from the neighboring ranch became a particular friend. She was a sturdy woman in her 40s with 5 grown children and a practical, no-nonsense attitude that Olivia found comforting. "First babies take their time," Mrs. Miller advised. "When your time comes, send Daniel to fetch me. I have helped birth half the babies in this county." Spring arrived with an explosion of wildflowers across the hills and a crop of new foals in the barn. Olivia, now visibly pregnant, moved more slowly but continued to manage the household and help with light ranch tasks. She had never felt healthier or happier. The love between her and Daniel had grown into something deep and unshakable, a partnership in the truest sense of the word. One evening in May, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold, Daniel said, "Do you ever think about that day at the train station, about how different things could have been?" "Sometimes," Olivia admitted, her hand resting on her rounded belly where the baby was actively kicking. "If Gerald Thompson had not rejected me, I would have married him and probably been miserable. If you had not been at the station that day, I do not know what would have become of me." "I think you would have survived," Daniel said. "You are stronger than you know, Olivia, but I am selfishly grateful that I was there, that I got to bring you home." "It is strange," Olivia mused. "I came west looking for security, for a practical arrangement that would keep me from poverty. I never expected to find love." "Neither did I," Daniel said, taking her hand and raising it to his lips. "I thought I was looking for a competent wife to help run the ranch. Instead, I found the love of my life." "You are the love of my life, too," Olivia said softly. Everything that seemed like such a disaster that day at the train station, it was actually a blessing in disguise. Being rejected was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it led me to you. To us. Daniel corrected, placing his hand over hers on her belly. To this family we are building. The baby kicked again, as if in agreement, and they both laughed. Olivia leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder, feeling completely content in a way she had never imagined possible a year ago. She had come west expecting a marriage of convenience, and had found instead a love story more romantic than any novel she had read. The summer months grew hot, and Olivia became increasingly uncomfortable as August approached. The baby seemed determined to take up every available inch of space inside her, and she waddled more than walked. Daniel fussed over her constantly, bringing her cool drinks, fanning her when the heat became oppressive, and insisting she rest more than she wanted to. "I am fine," Olivia protested for the 100th time as Daniel tried to take over the simple task of peeling vegetables for supper. "Pregnant women have been doing household tasks since the beginning of time." "Not my pregnant woman," Daniel said stubbornly. "Sit down and supervise if you want to feel useful." Olivia sat, unable to suppress a smile at his protectiveness. She knew she was lucky to have a husband who cared so much. Many women faced pregnancy alone or with husbands who considered it entirely women's business. Daniel was involved in every aspect of preparing for their child, from building furniture to reading Olivia's household management books to learn about infant care. On a sweltering night in mid-August, Olivia woke to a familiar cramping sensation low in her belly. She lay still for a moment, assessing, then quietly shook Daniel awake. "I think it is time," she said calmly. Daniel bolted upright, suddenly wide awake. "Now, are you certain?" "Fairly certain. The pains are regular. I will get Mrs. Miller," Daniel said, scrambling out of bed and pulling on his pants. "Do not do anything, just stay in bed. I will be back as fast as I can." "Daniel," Olivia said, catching his hand. "First babies take time, remember? There is no need to panic." "I am not panicking," Daniel said, though he clearly was. "I am being efficient." He kissed her quickly and rushed out. Olivia heard him saddling a horse with record speed, then the thunder of hoofbeats as he galloped toward the Miller ranch. She took advantage of his absence to get up, change into her oldest nightgown, and prepare the bedroom according to Mrs. Miller's instructions from previous visits. Daniel returned within an hour, bringing not only Mrs. Miller, but also a younger woman named Sarah who served as Mrs. Miller's assistant during births. Mrs. Miller took one look at Olivia calmly folding clean linens and laughed. "First-time fathers are always the worst," she told Olivia. "Your husband nearly kicked down our door. I told him you would likely not deliver until tomorrow afternoon at the earliest, but he insisted we come immediately." "I did not kick the door," Daniel protested. "I knocked vigorously." The women shooed Daniel out of the bedroom despite his protests that he wanted to stay. "You can help by keeping the coffee hot and the stove stoked," Mrs. Miller said firmly. "Birth is women's work. We will call you when there is news." The labor proved long, as Mrs. Miller had predicted. All through the night and into the next day, Olivia worked through the waves of pain with Mrs. Miller and Sarah's guidance. It was harder than anything she had done, her body working to bring new life into the world. But she thought about Daniel waiting anxiously in the next room, about the baby she would soon hold, and she found strength she had not known she possessed. Daniel wore a path in the main room floor with his pacing. He made coffee, then let it grow cold untouched. He picked up his account books and stared at them without seeing. He jumped every time he heard a sound from the bedroom. The hours dragged by with agonizing slowness. Finally, as afternoon sunlight slanted through the windows, a thin wail pierced the air. Daniel froze, his heart in his throat. The crying continued, growing stronger, and then the bedroom door opened and Sarah emerged with a smile. "Congratulations," she said. "You have a son. A big, healthy boy." Your wife did beautifully." Daniel pushed past her into the bedroom without waiting for permission. Olivia lay propped against pillows, her hair damp with sweat and her face exhausted but radiant. In her arms, wrapped in a soft blanket, was a red-faced, squalling infant with a shock of dark hair. "A boy," Olivia said, her voice hoarse but triumphant. "Daniel, we have a son." Daniel approached slowly, almost reverently. He looked down at the baby, this tiny person he and Olivia had created, and felt something break open in his chest. "He is perfect," he whispered. "You want to hold him?" Olivia asked. With shaking hands, Daniel accepted the precious bundle. The baby immediately stopped crying, his unfocused eyes seeming to try to find Daniel's face. Daniel supported the small head carefully, overwhelmed by how light and fragile his son felt. "Hello," Daniel said softly. "I am your papa, and that beautiful woman there is your mama. We have been waiting for you." Mrs. Miller and Sarah discreetly withdrew, leaving the new family alone. Daniel sat carefully on the edge of the bed, and Olivia leaned against him, all three of them connected in that magical moment of becoming a family. "What should we name him?" Olivia asked. They had discussed names endlessly over the past months, but had not been able to decide. Now, looking down at their son, Daniel said, James Brennan, after my father." "James," Olivia repeated, testing the name. "I like it. James Daniel Brennan." "James Daniel," Daniel agreed. He looked at his wife, his love, his partner in all things, and felt tears prick his eyes. "Thank you, Olivia. For him, for this, for everything." "Thank you," Olivia countered, "for rescuing me from that train station, for giving me a home and a family, for loving me." They sat together for a long time, watching their son sleep, marveling at his tiny fingers and perfect features. Eventually, Mrs. Miller shooed Daniel out so Olivia could rest, but he was back within an hour, unable to stay away from his wife and child. The days that followed were a blur of exhaustion and joy. James was a good baby, but he still needed feeding every few hours and care around the clock. Daniel insisted on helping with everything, changing diapers, walking the baby when he fussed, and bringing Olivia whatever she needed. The ranch work suffered somewhat, but Daniel did not care. His family came first. As the weeks passed and they settled into new routines, Olivia marveled at how much her life had changed. Just over a year ago, she had stood on a train platform, humiliated and alone, with no idea where her next meal would come from. Now she had a husband who adored her, a beautiful son, and a home that was truly hers. The transformation was so complete that sometimes it felt like a dream, but it was real. Daniel's kisses were real. James's sweet weight in her arms was real. The ranch spreading around them under the California sun was real. This was her life now, and it was more wonderful than anything she could have imagined. One evening when James was about 2 months old, Olivia was nursing the baby in the rocking chair Daniel had built when Mrs. Dawson, the church secretary who had witnessed their wedding, came calling unexpectedly. "I hope I am not intruding," Mrs. Dawson said when Olivia invited her in. "I wanted to meet the baby and see how you are settling in." Over tea and cookies, Mrs. Dawson shared news from San Jose, and eventually the conversation turned to that fateful day at the train station. "You know, Mrs. Dawson said thoughtfully, I heard that Gerald Thompson never did find himself a wife, ran his ranch into the ground and sold it last month. Moved east, I believe." Olivia felt a momentary flash of pity for the man who had rejected her, but it passed quickly. His loss had been her gain, after all. "I hope he finds happiness wherever he has gone," she said diplomatically. "You are kinder than I would be," Mrs. Dawson said. That man did not know what he was passing up, but his loss was certainly Mr. Brennan's gain. After Mrs. Dawson left, Olivia shared the news with Daniel over supper. He shook his head in amazement. That man had everything I wanted, offered to him on a silver platter, and he was too stupid to see it, Daniel said. I will never understand that. Neither will I, Olivia agreed, but I am grateful for his stupidity. If he had been wiser, I would not be here with you. Then here is to foolish men and second chances, Daniel said, raising his coffee mug in a mock toast. Olivia laughed and clinked her own mug against his, then got up to check on James, who was sleeping peacefully in his cradle by the fireplace. She looked down at her son, then across the room at her husband, and felt her heart swell with contentment. This was her family. These were her people. This was her home. And it was all because she had been brave enough to take a chance on a cowboy who offered her hope when she had none. The years passed with the smooth rhythm of ranch life. James grew from a squalling infant into a curious toddler, then an energetic boy who followed his father everywhere. He had Daniel's amber eyes and Olivia's delicate features, a perfect blend of both parents. He loved the horses from the time he could walk, and would spend hours in the barn watching Daniel work. When James was 3, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect. Daniel was just as protective but slightly less panicky. Their daughter, Margaret, was born in the spring of 1886, a tiny delicate creature with Olivia's green eyes and Daniel's dark hair. 2 children, Daniel said wonderingly, holding Margaret while James climbed onto his knee to peer at his new sister. We have 2 children, Olivia. A family. A beautiful family, Olivia agreed, her heart full to overflowing. The ranch continued to prosper. Daniel's reputation for breeding quality horses spread, and buyers came from as far away as Nevada and Oregon. He was able to hire 2 permanent ranch hands, which eased his workload considerably. With the extra help, Daniel had more time to spend with his family, teaching James to ride and helping Olivia in the garden while Margaret played in her cradle nearby. Olivia threw herself into creating a true home. She sewed curtains and quilts, planted flowers around the house, and established a lending library for the neighboring ranchers who loved to read as much as she did. She found deep satisfaction in the domestic arts, in creating beauty and comfort for her family, but she also continued her education. Daniel had surprised her on her 25th birthday with a complete set of Shakespeare's works, expensive leather-bound volumes that must have cost a significant portion of their savings. You are always talking about wanting to read the classics, he said, when she protested the extravagance. Now you can. Olivia read every evening after the children were in bed, sometimes aloud to Daniel, who discovered he enjoyed Shakespeare more than he expected. They would discuss the plays and sonnets, debating themes and characters while the fire crackled and the wind whispered outside. Life was not without challenges. There were harsh winters when they worried about the horses, dry summers when the creek ran low, and illnesses that swept through the community. When James was 5, he came down with scarlet fever, and Olivia and Daniel spent 3 terrifying days nursing him through the crisis. But he recovered, and they were reminded not to take their blessings for granted. The ranch itself continued to evolve. Daniel built an addition onto the house, adding 2 more bedrooms and a proper parlor. He improved the barn, built new corrals, and purchased a prize stallion that elevated the quality of their breeding program. The Brennan Ranch became known throughout Central California as a source of excellent horses. But more than the material success, what mattered was the love that permeated every aspect of their lives. Daniel and Olivia grew more devoted to each other with each passing year. They had built something rare and precious, a marriage based on respect, partnership, and genuine love, When James was 10 and Margaret 7, a third child joined the family. Olivia had thought her child-bearing years were finished, but apparently fate had other plans. Thomas was born in the summer of 1893, a robust baby with a powerful set of lungs. 3 children, Daniel said, echoing his words from years earlier. We really do have a family now. We have always had a family, Olivia reminded him. But yes, now we have a big family. With 3 children, the ranch house was full of noise and laughter. James was old enough to help with the horses, taking on real responsibilities and showing a natural talent for Daniel's work. Margaret was dreamy and artistic, spending hours drawing pictures of the animals and landscape. Thomas was too young yet to show his personality, but he was clearly going to be a handful. Olivia sometimes thought back to that desperate young woman standing on the train platform in 1882, holding a rejection telegram and wondering what would become of her. That woman could never have imagined this life, could never have dreamed that heartbreak would lead to such happiness. The town of San Jose had grown considerably over the years, transforming from a dusty frontier settlement into a thriving agricultural center. But the train depot remained largely unchanged, still the gateway for travelers arriving from the east. One autumn day in 1895, when Olivia was 35 and Daniel 44, they had business in town and brought the children along. After completing their errands, they walked past the train depot on their way to the ice cream parlor that had become a family tradition. Olivia stopped and looked at the wooden platform where her new life had begun 13 years earlier. Daniel, noticing her pause, came to stand beside her. "You are thinking about that day," he said. "It was not a question." "Yes," Olivia admitted. "I was so frightened and hurt, I thought my life was over." "It was just beginning," Daniel said, taking her hand. "I know that now, but I could not see it then." She turned to look at her husband, this good man who had offered her hope when she had none. "Do you ever regret it, speaking to me that day?" "Not for a single moment," Daniel said firmly. "That was the best decision I ever made. You have given me everything, Olivia. A home, a family, a purpose beyond just surviving. You have made me happier than I ever thought possible." "You did the same for me," Olivia said, her eyes shining with tears. "I love you, Daniel Brennan, more than I can ever say." "And I love you," Daniel replied. "Always have, always will." They kissed, right there on the street in broad daylight, while their children made exaggerated sounds of disgust that were belied by their giggles. When they pulled apart, Daniel kept his arm around Olivia's waist, and they continued toward the ice cream parlor as a family. That night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Daniel and Olivia sat on their porch watching the stars. It had become a cherished ritual, these quiet moments together at the end of busy days. "You remember the first time we sat here together?" Olivia asked. "The first night I was here, I was terrified," Daniel admitted. "I had just married a complete stranger and I had no idea if it was going to work out. I kept thinking I had made a terrible mistake, rushed you into something you would regret." "I was frightened too," Olivia said. "Everything had happened so fast, but even then I felt like I had made the right choice. There was something about you, Daniel, something solid and trustworthy. I knew I could build a life with you." "We built a good life," Daniel said with satisfaction. "A really good life." "The best life," Olivia agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching the night deepen around them. Somewhere in the barn a horse whinnied softly. An owl hooted from the oak trees on the hill. The familiar sounds of their ranch, their home, wrapped around them like a blanket. Olivia thought about everything they had been through together. The awkward first weeks of learning to live with a stranger. The slow growth of affection into love. The joy of their children's births. the challenges they had faced and overcome together. Every season, every year had woven them more tightly together until it was impossible to imagine life without Daniel. She had come west looking for security and found so much more. She had found love, passion, partnership, and family. She had found a place where she belonged, where she was valued not just for what she could do but for who she was. She had found home in the truest sense of the word. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For everything. For seeing past my plain face and my situation. For offering me a chance at a new life. For being patient with me. For loving me." Daniel pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Thank you for saying yes," he countered. "For taking a chance on a cowboy you had just met. For making this house into a home. For giving me a family. For loving me back." "I would say yes again," Olivia said. 1,000 times over I would say yes. "And I would ask 1,000 times over," Daniel replied. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Olivia Brennan, the very best thing." They stayed on the porch until the night grew cold, reluctant to let go of the moment. When they finally went inside and climbed into their bed, they made love with the practiced ease of long familiarity, but also with the passion that had never faded between them. Afterward, they fell asleep tangled together, as they had every night for 13 years. The story of their meeting became legend in the family as the children grew older. James, Margaret, and Thomas loved hearing about how Papa had rescued Mama at the train station, how she had been rejected by another man who was too foolish to appreciate her. "So if that other man had not sent Mama away, we would not exist?" Margaret asked one evening when she was about 12. "That is right," Daniel confirmed. "Then I am glad he was stupid," Margaret said firmly, making her parents laugh. As the new century approached, the Brennan Ranch was well established as one of the finest horse breeding operations in Central California. James, now a young man of 18, had taken on more and more responsibility, allowing Daniel to slow down slightly as he entered his 50s. Margaret had developed into a talented artist whose paintings of ranch life were sold in San Jose. Thomas, at 7, was showing signs of following in his father's footsteps with animals. Olivia and Daniel aged gracefully together, their love deepening with each passing year. They had their share of gray hair and weathered faces, the marks of a life lived outdoors and worked hard. But they were happy, truly and deeply happy. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Daniel surprised Olivia with a trip to San Francisco. It was the first time they had left the ranch for more than a day since their honeymoon, which had consisted of a single night in a San Jose hotel. They stayed in a fine hotel, ate in restaurants, attended the theater, and explored the city like young lovers. On their last evening, as they walked along the waterfront watching ships come into the harbor, Daniel said, "I have been thinking about that day at the train station. About how close I came to not speaking to you." "What do you mean?" Olivia asked, surprised. "I almost did not do it," Daniel admitted. "I saw you standing there, saw that telegram, and I thought about offering to help. But then I thought, what business is it of mine? She is a stranger. It would be presumptuous to interfere. I almost just walked away." "What made you change your mind?" "You did," Daniel said simply. "The way you stood there, so brave despite being hurt, the pride in your bearing. The way you refused to break down in public even though I could see how much you wanted to. I thought, there is a woman worth knowing. There is a woman worth taking a chance on, so I did." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "I am so glad you did, so very glad." "So am I," Daniel said. "Best decision of my life." They returned to the ranch renewed and refreshed, ready to take on whatever the future held. The years continued to pass, marked by milestones both large and small. James married a rancher's daughter from the neighboring county and brought his bride to live on the ranch, building a small house on the property. Margaret went to art school in San Francisco but returned home often, never quite ready to leave the ranch permanently. Thomas grew into a strapping teenager with his father's way with horses. Olivia and Daniel became grandparents when James and his wife welcomed a daughter in 1902. The circle of life continued, and they watched with joy as their family expanded. The ranch they had built together would continue beyond them, a legacy for their children and grandchildren. Through it all, their love remained the foundation of everything. They still had their evening routine of sitting on the porch, still made time for each other despite the busy demands of ranch and family life. They still kissed each other goodbye every morning and hello every evening. They still fell asleep tangled together, still woke reaching for each other. On a beautiful spring morning in 1907, Olivia stood on the porch of their home, watching Daniel work with a young horse in the corral. He was 66 now, his hair silver and his movements slower, but he still had that same gentle confidence with animals that had impressed her from the beginning. He looked up, caught her watching, and smiled that warm smile that still made her heart flutter after 25 years of marriage. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, from desperate rejected bride to cherished wife, mother and grandmother. She thought about all the moments, large and small, that had made up their life together. The struggles and triumphs, the joys and sorrows, the mundane and the magical. It had all started with a telegram that broke her heart and a cowboy who offered her hope. From that unpromising beginning, they had built something beautiful, something lasting. Their love story was not the fairy tale Olivia had dreamed of as a young girl. It was better because it was real. It was earned through hard work, mutual respect, and genuine caring. It had been tested by time and proven strong. Olivia looked out at the ranch stretching around her, golden hills dotted with grazing horses, the barn and outbuildings solid and well-maintained, the garden lush with spring growth. She looked at the house they had expanded and improved over the years, now filled with the sounds of family as Thomas practiced his reading lessons at the kitchen table while his niece played with dolls nearby. This was her kingdom, small but precious. This was the life she had built with the man she loved. It was everything she had never known she wanted, everything she had not dared to dream of during those dark days in Boston when her mother died, and she faced an uncertain future alone. The groom had sent her back like bad freight, but the cowboy at the next window had said he would take her. And in taking her, Daniel Brennan had given her the world. He had given her love, security, family, and home. He had given her a life worth living, a story worth telling. Olivia went inside and poured 2 cups of coffee, then walked down to the corral where Daniel was finishing up with the young horse. He saw her coming and secured the horse before climbing over the fence to join her. "Coffee break?" he asked with a smile. "Coffee break," Olivia confirmed, handing him a cup. "I was just standing on the porch thinking about how lucky I am." "Lucky how?" "Lucky that you were at that train station. Lucky that you spoke to me. Lucky that I was brave enough to say yes." She looked up at him, this man who had been her husband, partner, and love for a quarter century. "Lucky that I get to spend my life with you." Daniel set down his coffee cup and pulled her into his arms, careful not to spill her coffee. "I am the lucky one," he said. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Olivia. Then, now, and always." They stood there in the morning sunshine, holding each other while life went on around them. Horses grazed in the pastures. Thomas called something from the house. A hawk circled overhead. The creek burbled in the distance. All the familiar sounds and sights of the ranch they had built together, the life they had created from a chance meeting at a train station 25 years earlier. It was not the ending of their story, not yet. They still had years ahead of them, more grandchildren to meet, more sunsets to watch together, more mornings to wake up side by side. But it was a moment of perfect contentment, of recognizing the beauty of what they had accomplished together. The groom had sent her back like bad freight, but the cowboy at the next window had said he would take her. And in taking her, both their lives had been transformed. What had seemed like the worst day of Olivia's life had turned into the best, because it had led her to Daniel. What could have been a story of rejection and failure had become a love story for the ages. As they stood there together, Daniel and Olivia both understood that they had been given a precious gift, the gift of finding the right person at the right time, even in the midst of what seemed like disaster. They had taken that gift and nurtured it into something strong and beautiful, a love that would last the rest of their days and echo through the generations to come. This was their happily ever after, earned through hard work, mutual respect, and genuine love. This was the life they had built together, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of kindness and caring at a time. And it was more than either of them had ever dreamed possible on that hot July day in 1882, when a rejected bride and a kind cowboy took a chance on each other and changed both their lives forever.